Trust me, bro, if I was there, it wouldn't have gone down like that. Ever daydream of a situation where you get to be the hero? Take down a purse snatcher, save a puppy from a burning building, or even something more extreme? Men often seek meaning through courage, risk, and pain. And when life doesn't offer these moments, we'll imagine them or create them. But why does the male quest for meaning often feel so ritualistic, arbitrary, and weird? Has it always been this way? Last week I saw Fight Club. Stylish, bold, insouciant, hand-to-hand, sweaty and uncomfortable. Two guys that are pissed off at everything and nothing. David Fincher's love letter to Gen X angst. Despite its reputation and cliched place in the male-brained movie canon, people still talk about and interpret and misinterpret this movie because, yeah, it's a fun thing to argue about online, but it really does capture well the attitude of men in that generation, who felt aimless, beaten down by society without a war or cause to fight for.
No purpose or place.
I also recently finished reading this book called On the Road. Jazzy, adventurous, city to city, messy and miserable, two guys lost and looking for everything and nothing. It's a novel about hitchhiking, travel, chaos, and finding meaning. It's also one of the defining texts of the Beat generation, a literary movement that rose in the post-World War II, let's call it vacuum of purpose, whose aimless, meandering writing style carrying messages of anti-consumerism, sexual liberation, and drug experimentation caught fire and became the sacred texts of vagabonding men in the 40s and 50s, that were later subsumed into the hippie and counterculture movement of the next decade. What's weird is that On the Road describes events that happened 5 decades before Fight Club, book or movie, came out. And yet I saw this clear connecting thread of young but not that young men, who, sensing a lack of purpose and direction, would fill their lives with seemingly pointless, albeit intense behaviors, to then assign them profound meaning. There are echoes of the beats all throughout Fight Club. The movie opens with the narrator blowing up his apartment, and immediately after he and Tyler move into this dilapidated house in a crap part of town, as if to reject their possessions and elevate the holy concept of the experience over the material. And On the Road, Jack Kerouac leaves his aunt's home in New Jersey with $50 in his pocket to hitchhike all the way to San Francisco, also giving up his possessions and creature comforts, heeding the call for adventure, and possibly to get a change of scenery following his divorce. What's also amusing is the parallels between the key figures in both worlds. In On the Road, the main companion of our protagonist is a guy called Dean Moriarty. Dean is this wild, charismatic, and completely unfiltered man who provides the motivation for our protagonist to take more risks and consider deeper aspects of his life's purpose and philosophy. This obviously sounds familiar. Tyler Durden basically plays the role of Dean Moriarty, the wildcard friend in Fight Club. And in both cases, our protagonists start out dissatisfied with life, feel the pull of radical change from an enigmatic figure, and, interestingly, are both also the ones narrating the story, rather than it being told by a third person. And the similarities don't end there. In Fight Club, the protagonist is technically never given a name, but due to a recurring line in the movie, people online often refer to him as
Jack cannot regulate his heart rate, blood pressure, or breathing. I am Jack's colon.
I am Jack's raging bile duct. I am Jack's cold sweat. I am Jack's smirking revenge. I am Jack's wasted life. I am Jack's broken heart. Jack.
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise.
I wonder if anybody else has looked at this. Well, I'm sure they have. Let's see. Apparently Jack Kerouac, the author of On the Road, and his buddy Allen Ginsberg, another defining Beat generation figure, literally played out, beat for beat, one of Fight Club's most iconic scenes, decades before it was written.
What do you want me to do? You just want me to hit you?
Come on, do me this one favor.
Why?
Why? I don't know why. I don't know. Never been in a fight. You?
No, but that's a good thing.
No, it is not. How much can you know about yourself? You've never been in a fight. I don't want to die without any scars. So come on, hit me before I lose my nerve.
Oh, God.
This blogger, Rolf Potts, found a passage from Windblown World, a collection of Kerouac's journals, that describes a conversation he and Allen once had, and it is eerie how similar it is to Fight Club. Ginsberg went mad and begged me to hit him.
What, like in the face?
He wanted to know what else I had to do in the world that didn't include him, and he asked me to beat him up. I never was so horrified, mortified, and disgusted. Not smugly disgusted, but just riven by the spectacle of his mad, meaningless eyes staring at me in a mockery of human sensibility. He claimed that I was turning away from the truth when I started to leave.
Hit me again.
No, you hit me. Come on!
Unlike how things went down in Fight Club, I love that Kerouac immediately brushes off Ginsberg's request and this fake profundity that he wants to tie to an extreme action. Ultimately, I don't think you learn anything new from getting hit in the face.
What did you just say?
That isn't learned from trying anything else deeply uncomfortable and new. It just hurts. Later, Jack writes, I told him that I did have an unconscious desire to hit him, but he would be glad later on that I did not. It seems to me that I did the most truthful thing there. These Ginsbergs, just coming of demonic age, assume that no one else has seen their visions of cataclysmic emotion, 90% false and 10% childish, and try to foist them on others. I love Kerouac's ability to distill this idea into the most potent and unambiguous language. It's easy to conceptualize or even recall this experience in your own life. Visions of childish, cataclysmic emotion that drive us to do ridiculous things in search of meaning, such that the intensity of the emotion itself becomes the justification. It's profound because it makes me feel something. Between Ginsberg and Tyler Durden, it seems energetic and otherwise ambitious men sensing a lack of meaningful actions to take will just make one up and assign profound philosophical weight to it, even if it's kind of stupid. I always thought it was weird that the yin and yang concept in Chinese philosophy traditionally associates masculinity with brightness, the sun, and order, and femininity with the moon, darkness, and chaos. In my experience, it's been the other way around. As I've grown up, the women in my life have largely been better at navigating increasingly complex academic, professional, and social structures, and in response to the challenges of adulthood, many of my male friends will look to destroy those structures or themselves. But maybe the behavior we're discussing is a response to that very expectation and a failure to meet it, to be strong, stoic, smiling, the light. An example to others, emotionally in tune with your friends and family, but with no emotional problems yourself to speak of. That's basically who we're told to be. But the opportunities to be this person are becoming limited. I mean, few moments generate challenges worth meeting with this masculine ideal in the typical modern life. In 1841, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote an essay called Self-Reliance. It's the one with the foolish hobgoblins quote, which you've probably heard overused and often misquoted. The essay is a summarization of his school of philosophy, Transcendentalism, which essentially holds the purity and freedom of the individual over institutions and norms. In the essay, he also describes how transcendentalist ideas apply to manhood. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. It is a joint stock company in which the members agree, for the better securing of his bread to each shareholder, to surrender the liberty and culture of the eater. The virtue in most requests is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. It loves not realities and creators, but names and customs. What's interesting in this passage is how Emerson seems to implicitly define manhood by what it means to not have it. A society that denies us the appreciation of culture, reality, and creativity is literally in conspiracy against the manhood of its members, and so those aspects must represent to him something fundamental about being a man. In 1841 philosopher terms, manhood may just be a dated stand-in for personhood, but the importance of self-determination and transcendentalism is obviously not just limited to men anyways. He expands on the idea further in this quote from the same essay. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. So Emerson asks us to determine the moral worth of our actions on our own. This being a requirement to him for being a man also means he's asking us to be nonconformists in order to find out for ourselves what is good. He finds that the risk of falling into line, the difficulty in challenging the wider group's opinion, to be so great that he warns us with this prophetic urgency, insisting that to surrender one's judgment to the crowd is to betray the integrity of your own mind. Emerson wrote this a century and a half ago, and yet he too sounds a lot like an edgy 14-year-old discovering philosophy for the first time. I mean, Jack. He sounds a lot like Jack, actually. Which Jack? Deep down, Jack, and Ralph had the same complaint. There are just aspects of a man's life that are missing in the modern world. So, what are they? In the book, Being a Man in the Lousy Modern World, how about that title? The author Robert Twigger proposes that modern life lacks the rites of passage that many men need to partake in order to feel like men, and that these rites of passage must consist of challenges to your courage, mastery, or tolerance for pain or privation. It's this deep discomfort or intensity in emotion that elevates the rites to the profound for some men. One of the key issues of the book is that the lack of opportunity to take part in rites of passage in our society means the transition from a boy to a man is blurred, or never even takes place. You can be left feeling like a man in name only, having lived enough years but not having filled them with sufficiently substantive or interesting experiences.
You can't get married. I'm a 30-year-old boy.
Okay, don't lie. Have you ever imagined yourself in a situation where some robber at the corner store pulls a gun and you quietly walk up and knock him out in one punch? Or a thief steals a woman's bag and you tackle them and wrestle the bag away? I think a lot of men like to daydream about situations where we have to use our wits, strength, or dexterity to save the day. I mean, there are memes where guys say things like, if I was there, it wouldn't have gone down like that, to events like 9/11. These are ridiculous, absurd power fantasies, but they're so common, and I think for men in the modern world, it's our stand-in for the displays of courage we feel we're missing in our lives. Instead of rituals involving real risk, we replaced them with things like passing your driving test, graduating, or getting your first job. Twigger himself says,
I think rituals are the way we make transitions, and we've lost sight of that.
Well, and we sort of still have rituals, but as you point out in the book, they're sort of watered down.
Yeah. There's things like, pass your driving test,
Graduate high school, graduate college, get your first job.
Yeah, and they're lame as hell. I mean, you can't really look at yourself and think, I can stand shoulder to shoulder with, people who were in the First World War or, single-handedly paddled their way up the Amazon or something. So it's a sort of, you're going to just feel lame if you accept the culture.
Right. They're male rites of passages for this lousy modern world.
Yeah, exactly.
So Twigger argues that in the modern world, we don't have these opportunities to display courage, and so take part in the rites of passage required to transition from boyhood to manhood. And in lieu of these opportunities, people just daydream them, or some try to force them into existence. And that's because these days you have to seek out risky opportunities rather than allow them to come to you just by virtue of living in a dangerous world. To be in situations that demand quick thinking, perseverance, and courage, you need to challenge yourself by seeking out the unknown or denying yourself creature comforts deliberately, which feels and probably looks ridiculous. I once had a friend in my life similar to Dean Moriarty, or Tyler Durden, or Emerson, or whatever. He was charismatic in his delinquency, hilarious and brazen, and he made it his mission to bring about mayhem wherever mayhem ought not to be, and justified it with periodic injections of math, language, jazz, and the relationships between them. As dumb teens, we ran around LA smoking pot, setting shit on fire, pissing off adults, climbing fences, cell towers, and abandoned buildings, and generally being a huge nuisance to anyone who cared about us or our well-being. He literally even shouted, "Yes, yes, yes," at random moments like he was literally Dean Moriarty, though I don't know if he ever read the book. As a young idiot in the city, I followed him like a disciple of Dean, and in that mini-revolution recruited followers of my own. Fellow teenage agents of chaos, urban exploration, and armchair philosophy. I sometimes look back on these years and cringe thinking about what I did, but I'm also so glad that it happened. Otherwise, I think I'd probably be spending my early 20s wondering if there were, in fact, secrets to life's meaning hidden behind getting punched in the face, or casting aside all good judgment and worldly possessions in pursuit of intense, brutal reality. I think part of maturing as men is learning to wrestle with the middle finger that your internal psyche wants to stick to the world, but also to not cast it aside entirely. Robert Twigger argues that the real issue isn't risk itself, but the reluctance to evaluate it. He suggests we develop the ability to assess danger ourselves so we can confront it in manageable levels, and to not rely on others to tell us what's dangerous. Similar to how Ralph Emerson would urge us to develop our own instinct and to not rely on others' opinions to tell us what is moral or virtuous. If there's this intense longing for answers to a question you don't know, if you feel stagnant, untapped, like there's a part of this senseless behavior that just makes sense, if you only begrudgingly exist in modernity, this feeling is worth exploring, as others have for at least a century and a half. Something deep within drives many men toward adventure and risk. Rather than ignore it, I'd suggest exploring something genuinely risky, but meaningful, satisfying, fun, and ideally not actively harmful to ourselves and others, to direct this feeling towards. The history repeats. Jack, Ralph, and Rob all march to the same beat. So if you don't find a worthwhile struggle, you might invent a worthless one.